Our friends at My Patriot Supply are America's #1 preparedness company, and they are well stocked with the food your family may soon need. Other companies have run out of almost everything they sell because they didn't prepare for what the world is going through now. But My Patriot Supply walks the walk. You can trust this company, and right now you can save $100 on their 3-month emergency food kit. This kit has enough food to get you through the difficult times ahead. Go to preparewithbill.com and save $100 on your 3-month food kit. That's preparewithbill.com.
And we have, as usual, a lot to talk about. It just seems like things keep exploding. But one of the biggest pieces of news to me, Bill, is that the Durham investigation notes have been released. And I'm hearing all of this hoopla about it. And that is because the Clinton campaign actually paid a technology company to infiltrate the servers belonging to Trump Tower and later to the White House in order to establish an inference and the narrative to bring government agencies linking Donald Trump to Russia. Now, I'm not a computer person, but they actually literally made it look like the Trump computers were receiving messages from a Russian IP address. That's as best as I can put it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Bill Benny actually revealed that was possible back when we talked to him a year or two ago.
Exactly. I remember him saying that. And this is just astounding. I mean, to me, a good analogy is like planting drugs on somebody and then arresting them for possessing drugs, because they planted this information that they created, and then they were the ones colluding with the Russians, but then they tried to make it look like President Trump was colluding. And if you remember, the news media was all over this when he said that the Obama White House had wired his, Trump Tower, and they basically called him a liar and everything else. And even after Bill Barr confirmed that, yes, there had been spying on the Trump campaign, I remember Jake Tapper saying, well, I guess he found an attorney general who will say what he tells him to say. No, it was the truth. But Bill, I have a really hard time not becoming very emotional about this story. And I just want us to watch this short clip of Maria Bartiromo, because she can say things so well that I just can't. So let's watch that clip.
And before we cut to that, though, I just want to point out, if you remember, that the person who turned this around was Admiral Mike Rogers, who was then the head of NSA, who came out and said, yes, this is true. And that's what stalled the whole Clinton attempt to go forward with this Russia collusion narrative.
Right. And he's also the reason why President Trump moved during the transition period. He moved his offices to his New Jersey location because to get away from perhaps the wiretapping, as he put it, which it's called a different name now. But yeah. And Mike Rogers, I believe, resigned not long after that.
I hope Donald Trump sues them all for everything, because they damaged his reputation throughout his 4 years in office, so much so that he was constantly on defense, constantly explaining that there was no collusion, constantly explaining why that he had to explain that he thought they were spying on him. All of this, again, every American should be outraged by this. Do you know how many foreign countries want to get into the White House's internet flow? How many adversaries out there want to get into the White House, the President of the United States, internet activity? And this tech executive was able to do that? What does that tell us about the national security of this country? What does that tell us of the power of the Clinton machine enabling to take down her political enemy for 4 years straight and damage his reputation? Sure, she lost the election, but this is so much bigger. This is the biggest scandal we have ever seen. Now we know for sure they tried to cheat in the 2016 election. They tried to cheat in the 2020 election behind the guise of COVID. We are getting into it this morning. Oh, and by the way, I have to tell you, all weekend long, the White House leakers have been running around saying that Putin is going to invade Ukraine this Wednesday. So is it all a ruse that they are really going to invade this Wednesday, or are they trying to create all of this drama because we were getting this Durham information and because we just saw 40-year highs on inflation?
We're back, and Maria, true to form, really lays it on the line as far as it, and you can feel in what she says, you can feel her own anger and frustration with this whole situation.
Yeah, Maria gets real excited about stuff, and she's probably the only person on TV who is, at least in the host position, who will just go ahead and lay it out. And that's why Maria is so valuable to everybody.
And President Trump released a statement on this whole thing when the information came out. The statement was released February 12th. The latest pleading from the Special Counsel, Robert Durham, provides indisputable evidence that my campaign and presidency were spied on by operatives paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign in an effort to develop a completely fabricated connection to Russia. This is a scandal far greater in scope and magnitude than Watergate, and those who were involved and knew about this spying operation should be subject to criminal prosecution. In a stronger period of time in our country, this crime would have been punishable by death. In addition, reparations should be paid to those in our country who have been damaged by this. Statement by Donald J. Trump. I agree 100% with everything he has said, and I will add this. Yes, George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, a whole host of people were damaged by this, but I would say that the entire country was damaged by this. You know, this is just the latest Clinton scandal that we have seen. Bill, as you well know, because you did a documentary on the Bill Clinton and why he should be impeached. I mean, they have been causing problems for this country for a very long time.
Yep, I remember when Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton came to town for the first time, and the whole tenure around Washington, D.C. changed because Hillary was coming into town with this reputation of having been associated with a lot of people dying under mysterious circumstances. And it had its immediate effect.
It absolutely had its immediate effect. And some of the people who have been outspoken have disappeared, as you said, or something happened to them. But it is past time for the Clintons and all of their people with them to face justice. Somebody said to me, will they ever face justice now? And I said, I do not know, but I know one thing, and that is true. They will not escape the justice of God.
As part of that film, which was called Impeach Clinton, Is It Justified? I put in the first hints of the relationship, the illegal relationship between the Clintons and China. They were taking money from China way back then, and that part, I think, what the Chinese intelligence service calls elite capture, that was where that began. And so they just duplicated this financial payoff under the table model again and again and again with key people throughout not only the legislature, the executive, the bureaucracy, and even leaders of commercial ventures paid them off to the point where they were captured. And it's worked remarkably well for China. And I don't know, I hope somebody in Congress knows how to deal with this, because I'm not sure how.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too. We've seen this over and over and over again. Speaking of blaming things on Russia, Hunter Biden's laptop, all of that information came out before the 2020 elections, and yet they tried to say that was Russian disinformation. Well, of course it was not. And if ever there was a case of pay to play, there you go. I mean, the money that they've raked in from many different countries and over the years, apparently, has just been astounding. And all of that kind of recently came out. You know, we've said this before, but the press, the big tech, a lot of this stuff falls at their feet, because this goes back to what we were saying about censorship. And speaking of censorship, one of the situations that we're dealing with still from Israel, the leading Israeli immunologist who has written a letter basically to his Ministry of Health, it's time to admit failure. 2 years late, he says, you finally realize that a respiratory virus cannot be defeated and that any such attempt is doomed to fail. You do not admit it because you have admitted almost no mistake in the last 2 years. Still, in retrospect, it is clear that you have failed miserably in almost all of your actions. And even the media is having a hard time covering your shame. I think he is 100% right. I mean, we have seen this for the past 2 years, all this lockdowns and insistence upon wearing masks, whereas recently it has come out that masks provide little to no protection from the virus. And recently, 2 studies coming out of Johns Hopkins that state that one of them states that the lockdowns were basically ineffective. And I would argue that they caused more harm than good. When you look at the rise in suicides and the number of cancer patients who didn't go to the doctors when they should have, and just the people losing their jobs, losing their standing, and all of that. And another study from Johns Hopkins that our own immunity provides 650 days of protection from the virus. So when you have your own immunity working for you, what's the point of a vaccine? What we're seeing now is that some of the governors are rolling back the mandates, but some of the governors are increasing mandates.
Right. Well, that's part of the strategy where the hard left, the ones that are really controlled by the Communist Party USA, have been ordered to continue down the path, even to greater levels of repression, to not give in, to not admit that they were wrong. And that's what they're going to try to do. And that's what Gavin Newsom is doing in California, as well as the whole California legislature, which is now passed, or not passed, but at least proposed, possibly passed. I didn't quite have time to get that clear. Legislation where every commercial business in California is going to have to provide proof that all of their W-2 employees, as well as their contract employees, have been fully vaccinated, or else the company does not come into compliance, and there'll be some type of retribution. I don't know what that is, but I mean, they're still going full Nazi headlong. And just this morning on Maria Bartiromo's show today.
Will you commit today to release all records fully unredacted by the end of this week so Congress and the American people can know the truth about NIH's role and the origins of COVID-19?
So again, Senator, it really pains me to have to just point out to the American public how absolutely incorrect you are. What came out last night on Project Veritas was a grant that was submitted to DARPA. Then it distorted and said, we funded the grant. We have never seen that grant, and we have never funded that grant.
That was Dr. Fauci once again changing the subject when asked about his annual salary of $434,000 at a congressional hearing last month. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall later exposed Fauci's lies by obtaining previously unpublished financial disclosures that show he made $1.7 million in 2020, including income, royalties, travel perks, and investment gains. Senator Marshall joins us right now. He sits on the Senate Help Committee and is also a medical doctor himself. Senator, it's good to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for your investigation into Fauci and his COVID cover-up. We want to get to that. But first, you have breaking news this morning. You're trying to end the mask mandates. Tell us what you want to do this upcoming week.
Yeah, Maria, well, good morning. We have two opportunities on the Senate floor this week. One is to stop President Biden's declaration of emergency, the COVID declaration of emergency. And number two is to stop Dr. Fauci's Medicare vaccine mandate. It is time for us to take the power and control of our everyday lives out of the hands of Joe Biden and Dr. Fauci. Americans are ready to turn the page and live their own lives. And I say this in the background that 95% of Americans have some level of immunity now to COVID. The new case rate's about 10% of what it was a couple weeks ago. It is time to move on and give the power and control back to Americans. Think about this Medicare vaccine mandate just for a second. So this week it'll go into effect, and it's going to impact every hospital, every doctor's office, every nursing home in America. We already have a huge nursing shortage, and I think of those nurses I stood beside in March, April, and May of 2020 that were working in an ICU that now have natural immunity, but Joe Biden wants to fire them. So we have to stop that mandate. There's not a person in America that won't be impacted by this, whether you're waiting to have an elective surgery done or you have a loved one you're trying to get into some type of a nursing facility. So we're trying to stop both of those and take the power away from them.
Well, why? Why isn't the White House on board about this? I know that President Trump back in 2020 declared this emergency because of COVID, and it needs to be renewed every 6 months. That deadline to be renewed is March 1st. Why won't Biden just end it rather than renewing it as per what you're talking about? Is this about power?
Maria, that you took the words right out of my mouth. It is about power. It's about control. This federal government really thinks that they know what's best for you and your children. They think they know whether this vaccine is right for your 2-year-old, your 4-year-old. They want to come in and prescribe to you what your education should look like for your children as well. But it is absolutely all about power and control. And Congress can seize it back. We need to stand up and do our job and seize back that power. We have the ability to do it.
Okay, let me move on to Dr. Fauci. I know you and Jim Jordan and Rand Paul are in full throttle mode at this point in putting the pieces together. What are you planning to do once, if you do get the majority in the Senate, in the way of investigating Fauci and a potential cover-up of COVID-19?
Yeah, Maria, you make a great point. We have to have the majority to have subpoena power. So to get people like Peter Daszak in front of us, Peter Daszak ran EcoHealth. They were the ones that Dr. Fauci was running the money through to fund viral gain of function in Wuhan, China. So we need to get those people in front of us. You know, there's a secret meeting that happened on February the 1st. Before the February 1st meeting, scientists were telling this is 2020, scientists were telling Dr. Fauci significant chance that this came from a lab in Wuhan, and somehow this secret meeting happens, and over the next 2 months, those same people change their mind, and those same people receive some $3 billion in grants over the next 2 years. Some of them were renewable grants, some of them were new monies as well. So we need to get those folks in front of us that were in that secret meeting, the folks that signed the letters that allowed the national media to start pushing down against people like Tom Cotton and myself, people who thought all along this came from a laboratory in Wuhan. And I'll guarantee you that Jim Jordan and Jamie Comar and Rand Paul are like bulldogs dogs. They're going to grab a hold of someone's seat, and we're not letting go till we get to the truth.
Exactly. And what goes along with all of that information is that infamous now email between Francis Collins and Dr. Fauci saying we need to squelch these fringe doctors, one of whom was Dr. Bartiromo, from Stanford, I believe. But yeah, they had planned on, I guess I shouldn't be shocked, Bill, that they paid those doctors off or whatever, because they said that that's what they were going to do. They were going to have to put down that information as being fringe doctors.
Or, your family might come unto certain misfortunes because the Chinese are very effective at having people disappear.
Yes. Well, speaking of people disappearing, do you remember, I'm sure you do, Dr. Zeke Emanuel?
Yep.
He was the brother of Rahm Emanuel, who was Obama's chief of staff. Talk about keeping it all in the family. He is known for his advocating death panels. And what death panels are is this was a panel of people who would guide decision on who should get medical care and who shouldn't based on their ability to contribute to a society.
When you translate this into the Hillary Clinton version of this narrative, as she put it, these people are called useless eaters and we should get rid of them.
Exactly. Well, at any rate, here's the connection. Dr. Emanuel was the director of bioethics for the NIH, while Dr. Fauci was there at the NIH, and he was the director until Dr. Fauci's wife took over that position in 2012. So it's all in the family.
Emanuel wasn't quite close enough to Dr. Fauci, so they fired him and brought his wife in.
I found this to be interesting on a little bit of a different note, but Dr. Malone, has said that one of the top owners of Spotify is also one of the top owners of Moderna. Now, if you know, Spotify has been involved in somewhat censoring Joe Rogan because he was touting the effectiveness of ivermectin. Well, if ivermectin works, then the Moderna vaccines would get less play or less use. And so all of that somehow comes full circle. We still have the truckers standing strong out there. There's all kinds of activity going on in that world. And, the police have made some arrests, and we have some of those, I guess you would call them anti-trucker group of people marching down the streets. Bill, I was watching some of that, and they're chanting some of the same chants that we heard from the Black Lives Matter and Antifa group. I'm Beth Still reporting, and that's all I have to say about that.